Sheri, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to promote the work of the godfather of resentment processing. That's right, Mr. Graham Hawley. Graham was our guest on episode 185, titled Simply Health Conscious with Graham Hawley. He consults with a lot of people about getting their health side of their life on track, whether that be sobriety or at least cutting down on alcohol, eating right, exercising. As it says, simply health conscious. So a lot of the changes that he tries to help people make are,
simple strategies that you can work in and work up to and build in. And
you even highlighted the subtitle of his book. I know how much you love long subtitles of books. Graham has published a book now. It is available on in paperback and on Kindle on Amazon. And the book is titled Small Steps, Big Results. Subtitle, Simple Strategies for Sustainable Weight Loss, Lasting Energy, and Lifelong Health. And we encourage our listeners, if you're in the midst of or contemplating making a change to the way you go about, orbiting the sun and making decisions that can prolong the number of orbits you get, we encourage you to check out Graham's work. Graham is a great guy. I just want to promo Graham. Like, I talked about his book, which is what I told him I would do.
He's a good human.
But now I just want to talk about him as a human. He was one of the only people, when I announced that I was sober and I had stopped drinking, and I announced that to my drinking buddies, I got a lot of encouragement. But he was the only one that scheduled an appointment to go drink wine with me and hear about it. Now, I love this. This is actually a cool, short story. He wanted to hear about my decision to become sober. He wanted to hear about it because he cared about me as a friend. He also, obviously, with some of the questions he was asking me, he was curious, I wonder how some of these things might apply in my life. So, very inquisitive, very curious, and you know how much I love curious people. Mm-hmm. But he didn't want to insult me and be like, let's go drink water and talk. So he invited me out for a drink, which I think is, was at the top of the list of the ways he knew how to socialize. And so even if I wasn't going to drink, he still had a couple of glasses of wine, and I really felt respected. That, I don't know, does that sound weird to you as someone who doesn't really give a shit whether people drink or not? If he had invited me out for a glass of milk, I'd have been like, oh, Graham wants to be drinking wine, but he's drinking milk with me because I can't drink. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I'm just imagining you two silent up to the bar for a glass of milk.
How good do you think bar milk is? Yeah, we got this half gallon from 1994. Somebody wanted it for their coffee and then didn't come back in.
Yeah, it's just cream that's watered down because they use it for their White Russians. Yeah, I think that was a good way to show that he was still just being himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People aren't that way around newly sober people.
Nervous.
Everyone's on eggshells and Well,
Sorry,
I really
I'm
appreciate that.
Also thinking of you guys sitting there with milk mustaches.
Yeah.
And now that you have a full beard and a mustache, which you didn't back in those days, I'm just imagining it all all up in your mustache. Yeah.
Graham uses the C word like a true Englishman.
Yeah, as I say, don't forget to mention he's English. So, warning, when you listen to that podcast, there's some cursing going on.
I don't think we use the C word in the podcast.
I think we said specifically don't. Or I think we edited it out. I think it sneaked in there.
But I have been with Graham in an environment where the C word was definitely not welcome, which is
high school soccer.
90+ % of the environments in this country anyway. Mm-hmm. But for those who don't know, in England and amongst people, Englishmen, that word is very common. It's like darn to them. And so he used it once someplace where you just don't use it, and I was terrified for him. And it ended up being okay, but it was a really funny situation at the time. I also want to highlight the fact that Graham is a big fan of tomato pie. I don't know, I haven't read his book yet. I don't know if his tomato pie recipe is in his book. I hope that it is, because he makes
pretty rich. I'm very curious about his.
Yeah, he's a big fan of his tomato pie, and you made a tomato pie this week. And I ate some of it last night, and I still think, coming up on 24 hours later, it might be the best thing I've ever put in my mouth.
Thanks.
It was so freaking good.
I know. I'm going to have to keep that recipe and remember all of my little tweaks.
So now when I think of Graham, I'll think of tomato pie, and I'll think of tomato pie, and I'll think of you. And you and Graham are forever connected by the tomato pie in my mind. Oh, and the resentment processing, since he's the one that taught us about resentment processing.
Of resentment.
So that's why he's the godfather of resentment processing. Speaking of putting tomatoes in things, you made a tomato bread.
Mm-hmm.
Green tomato bread.
Green tomato. Quick bread.
So,
like pumpkin bread, banana bread, zucchini bread. Right. Kind of bread. Quick bread.
When you said you were making that, I thought you were nuts. And then you were like, but you like zucchini bread. And I'm like, okay, good point. Zucchini bread should not taste like that. There's no reason for it. And green tomato bread shouldn't taste as sweet and delicious as it does. But is the fruit or zucchini or whatever, the vegetable, is it just in there for moisture is what I guessed? Is that right?
Probably, yeah.
I mean, you don't really taste the...
No, you don't taste it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're officially old. I included in the preamble to our podcast episode talk about green tomato bread. And when I wrote it down in my notes, it didn't occur to me how old that would make us sound, but now that we're talking about it...
Yeah, considering the fact that the person that gave me all the green tomatoes before the frost hit was someone who's older. I won't call her old because she'd come and kick my ass.
Is she older than us?
She's older than us.
Well, then she's old, Sheri.
Okay.
She's old enough.
And then
listen,
she's
old enough that I know she doesn't know how to listen to podcasts, so I'm not worried about her coming and kicking our ass.
She loved it. Our neighbor who just turned 80 loved it, and then asked for the recipe for her PT.
Oh,
all the old people.
The 80 person loved it too?
75, 74 and older people loved it. And you loved it. You ate a lot.
I did.
Yeah.
I like all those quick breads. Okay. So, the last thing I want to say about Graham is because Graham is so curious, because of that example I had, that experience I had with him inviting me out for wine when I was newly sober, where I drank soda water and he drank wine.
Or a glass of milk.
Or a glass of milk. He's very curious. And so if he's written a book, it will be well researched and it'll be based on the latest information. He's not the kind of person that just spouts things off and is, trying to get rich writing a book, because nobody in the last couple of decades has gotten rich writing a book, or at least not most people. So that's not what it's about. He is genuine and sincere when it comes to trying to spread the word about the fact that the key to health, it's not hard or confusing. It's not necessarily a pill or an injection. It's just some lifestyle changes that are doable if you've got the determination to do so. So I encourage people to check out Graham Hawley's book, Small Steps, Big Results. Okay, I want to share something with our audience that I'm very, very passionate about. You've heard me talk about this, Sheri. I think so women have changed so dramatically in our society, in our culture, and men, we've got some adapting to do. And that is becoming so evident in all the work that we do. And that's why we kind of keep coming back to this. We talk about emotional masculinity, emotional maturity, emotional safety. But it's not just because we're stuck on that topic. That's the area that most needs attention and change in our culture. Sheri, the year that I was born in 1973, your mother, who recently passed a couple of weeks ago, she was 28 at the time, and she had to get her father to co-sign when she opened a checking account because women weren't allowed to have their own checking accounts. So that was in our lifetime that was something that existed. Later that same decade, as I started elementary school, the gender gap in higher education still favored men. Just 10 months before the Miracle on Ice, I'm mentioning that because I'm trying to tie it to something in the culture that is really well known. People remember. The Miracle on Ice was when the U.S. men's hockey team shocked the world and won the gold medal in 1980. At that time, there had never been a democratically elected female head of state in Europe or North America. Now, I said that it was the U.S. men's hockey team that won the gold medal. That was a waste of a word. There was no reason for me to say men's hockey because there wasn't a women's hockey team.
Hockey league at that time. Yeah.
That's right. Women's hockey was not an Olympic sport until almost 2 decades later in 1998. So I'm just tying these things to things that have happened within my lifetime. As I entered middle school in 1994, no woman had ever led a Fortune 500 company unless, and you're going to love this little caveat, it was her family's business or she was the co-CEO with her husband. Of course, couldn't let her off the leash enough to run it herself. As long as her husband was there, she could have the title. The summer between my sophomore and junior years in college, on Independence Day in 1993, think back to where you were on Independence Day 1993, it was still legal for a man to rape his own wife in parts of the United States. That was a pretty big turn I took there.
Yeah, that dark quick.
Think about the sparklers you were waving around.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was
on the 4th of July in 1993.
And then
did you know men could rape their wife back then?
Legally.
So I didn't mean for it to be such a, kind of cryptic turn, but that is pretty amazing.
Forced sexual encounter was still legal and wouldn't have held up in court if it was between two married people.
Yeah, I don't even think there's a charge you could have made in some states. Like, what law are you charging? There isn't a law that exists. He has every right. And that was 1993. It wasn't until shortly thereafter that it was made illegal in all 50 states. There are 2 ways to look at that timeline of discrimination and oppression and violence. I mean, you have every right. We are justified to, and really obliged to, be ashamed of the treatment of women throughout the history, tracking back to before the beginning of really civilization. But also, and even better, when we think about this timeline that I just shared, I think it's really important that we celebrate the glorious achievement of all the change that has taken place in our timeline. So yes, we were barbaric just 50 years ago, but look at all the progress we've made in the last 50 years. And I know there are some listeners that are cursing at their speaker or their phone or their earbuds right now and saying, yeah, but look at what the current administration is trying to take away, or look at what the right is trying to take away. I get that. But the thing we're not trying to address right now is current political furor or anger or backsliding. I want to celebrate the progress that has been made because it's undeniable. It's pretty. And Sheri, I'm just curious. Until I sat down and worked through this timeline some time ago, when this was becoming what I felt was a more and more important topic in the work that we do with people, I didn't realize how much, obviously that a lot of stuff has changed for the positive for women, but I didn't realize how much of it has happened just within our lifetime. Does it surprise you? Or did it surprise you the first time I brought it to your attention? Or were you like, hey, dumbass, I'm a woman. I already knew all that stuff.
Kind of a little bit of everything. Some of it is shocking and surprising and disgusting. But knowing how I've been treated or I've seen other women being treated. And I mean, my mom was a single woman in the early 70s. So there was a lot going on for women's liberation and women's rights that I saw that, she didn't have a lot of the legal precedents to kind of stand up and argue about getting paid a higher wage for some of the work that maybe a male would have done, just because it wasn't even anything I think that they felt like that they could do. Mm-hmm. So I remember and also at that time there were a lot of movies in the late 70s and 80s about women who were fighting for the injustices in their maybe the factories that they worked in and things like that. So I remember hearing about a lot of these women that were kind of standing up for it, and also just being a woman myself and knowing that getting called cutie and sweetie and honey while I was waitressing or serving drinks by older men was never really, it kind of annoyed me, but it didn't occur to me that I didn't have to be called that I had an opportunity, that I had the right to not be called that. I could be called by my name or miss, if as being a waitress and stuff, but honey, sweetie, sugar, all that. No, I didn't know that I didn't have to be called that. I also worked, one of my part-time jobs in high school was working at a hardware store in southern Indiana. And yeah, there was a lot of men that came in and, like really kind of mansplained things about how to ring things up. And I'm like, I can calculate wood and lumber parts. I know how to do all this. I know how to, and it just, but it, also I was in high school. So I didn't, and just I graduated high school. So I didn't think I had the right to speak up for myself.
Yeah.
So lived experience, learned experience.
I'm curious. I hadn't thought about this before, but you made me think of it. Was there ever any, like those misogynistic kind of put-offing, inappropriate comments?
Off-putting?
Off-putting, put-offing, yes. Was there ever any part of that, like did you ever, if it was somebody you knew and they called you sweetie, were you like, oh, that's a term of endearment? Or,
yeah, I think it could have probably been a little bit different if it was somebody I knew.
Yeah.
But if it was a stranger that looked leery and,
they're at a bar by themselves drinking whiskey.
At you. Yeah.
Calling you sweetie. Yeah, okay.
It's
Good
also
point.
context. So, yes,
Yeah,
it very
for
much
sure.
was context.
Yeah.
But, like, you didn't dare ask my name. You just, I talked to that sweetie on the phone. Like, when people, would call back and want to ask questions when I worked at the hardware store about, like, a rental return or something, because we also rented out equipment. And, I talked to that young, and they didn't say young lady. They just said that little sweetie or whatever. Because my boss, the owner of that franchise, would always be like, well, they're looking for, and he would be mocking. He was a very...
Yeah.
He didn't like that. He didn't like that the women that worked there were being treated misogynistically.
When those old church ladies said to me, oh, honey, do you not know how a crock pot works?
That's in Indiana, bless your heart.
I did not. It is. You're exactly right. I did not take offense to that. Well, so the bottom line is that in our lifetime, women have earned educational superiority because that higher education gender divide has swung the opposite direction. More women go to college and get college degrees now than men do. So in our lifetime, women have earned educational superiority, financial independence, sexual autonomy, and intellectual equality, and all of that while maintaining the nurturing instincts to keep the whole species alive. And I think that's phenomenal. And I don't mention that only because I want to celebrate how awesome that is, although that certainly would be a worthy topic for an entire podcast episode. I could get behind that 100%. But the reason I want to talk about it is because while women have equalized and excelled their place in society and culture, men have just not adapted. We see the fallout in relationships from this all the time. 70% of divorces are initiated by women, and I hear pundits on the radio and on TV and on social media that say women have just become unsatisfiable and they're needy and they expect too much from the relationships. Well, my answer back to those pundits is they expect more than they used to from their relationships, but what they demand is respect. What they expect is to be treated with respect, to be treated with emotional safety, to be treated equally. They don't necessarily, they're not too demanding. Now, certainly, there's thousands or millions or however many divorces in this country on an annual basis. And there's certainly some argument to be made that there's case by case, right? But the vast majority, the fact that 70% of divorces are now initiated by women isn't because they're too demanding. It's because they're demanding the level of respect that they deserved all along. Yeah,
they're just asking for the level of respect that hadn't been there in the past. And maybe they're growing and changing and learning in their own lifetime of marriage. Because as you grow, you should be changing and evolving and have a growth mindset.
That's right.
So maybe what you married wasn't exactly what you would expect now, and so asking for it doesn't make you needy or demanding. And of course, the caveat to that is there are a-holes of all genders
true
that are going to be demanding and unpleasable or
I don't know. I probably said a word that wasn't really a word.
Probably you made up a word because you're so educated.
That's right.
But, there's going to be people that are just unsatisfied with whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, but just remember, as the marriage or relationship evolves, people grow and change, and hopefully that's something they can pivot instead of saying, oh, they're too demanding now. Which side of it? No, maybe they're just asking for more than what they had at the beginning. I want more out of you because we've learned so much than I did back in 1995, 96 when we first were together.
Yeah.
There are things that I just know that I need that I didn't know I needed then because I didn't know how to explain it or I didn't think I was worthy of it.
I think something that's really interesting about this, so people that are near our age, we're Generation X. Nobody ever talks about Generation X, so I'll go ahead.
Except for how awful we are nowadays on memes. And I'm like, sorry, we're not awful.
We're awesome.
Gen Zers, if they would just open their eyes to how wonderful we are.
I saw a meme I liked the other day. It said, we were 30 years old when we were 12 years old, and we're still 30 years old now that we're 50 years old. Yeah. That's exactly how I feel. But anyway, us Gen Xers, or people in the vicinity of our age, we have an interesting conundrum, both women and men. Because, yes, all of this progress has been made for women over the course of our lifetimes. I would give the women of Gen X a great deal of credit for that. I mean, they are who initiated a lot of the change that's taken place. But you have a ton of people in our age range, Sheri, that grew up with the kind of misogynistic, patriarchal conditioning, and now, in midlife, understand that they deserve more respect than they've ever demanded their whole life. And they are trying to shift and kind of claw back the respect that they deserve. Whereas maybe a Gen Zer, demands this right out of the gate because they were raised that way. Or because they've come of age into young adulthood with an understanding that the world has changed. You and I have a mother that couldn't get a checking account, right?
Yeah.
When we were going to college, you could still rape your wife, right? So, we've lived on both sides of it. And like I said, again, giving a ton of credit to Gen X kind of age range women for causing the progress. But there's also the vast majority of people in our age range that are like, oh, I used to just accept this shit and now I'm going to demand better. That's really hard because the people that are in my life have, in many cases, been in my life for years and decades. So now I'm going to demand what I have deserved all along.
And I wouldn't say demand. They're going to ask instead of demand.
Okay.
I don't think that a lot of us are out there demanding things. I think we're asking, and then the defensiveness of the partner is twisting it to say demand.
Yeah. I think the partner goes, what do you mean I can't just grab your boob every time I walk into the room? What do you mean I can't call you sweet tits whenever I want to? Why are you changing? Why are you changing the rules? And what the partners of the women that you and I get to know, what they don't understand is, the people in our groups, the people in Echoes of Recovery, the women that we get to know, they aren't the ones that change the rules. Society changed, culture changed. Men have not adapted to the change. And so if you are a man like me and your partner is not demanding but asking for more, asking to be treated with a great deal more respect than she has maybe your entire marriage, that's not to be looked at as though she's punishing you for something. She's just trying to scrape and claw to be treated in the way that she deserves to be treated because everything has changed around us. We did a writing prompt in our Echoes of Recovery group just recently. The question was, what would have happened had you demanded sorry, I used the word demand.
No, it's the demeaning. I think that is
so
demeaning. It, huh? I think that it just gives a negative connotation for asking what is right of every human.
Yeah. I look at it like it's bold.
Grabbing them by the balls and telling them, listen.
It's Superwoman. It's Wonder Woman. I demand this. But anyway, I am going to continue. I won't edit the word because this is a past tense story I'm telling.
Okay.
So the mistake's already been made.
Yeah.
I can't edit history. So the writing prompt was, what would have happened had you demanded the respect you are working to demand now back then? So what would have happened if the respect that you deserve, you had demanded it back then? And we gave our writers the option on what back then is. You can go back as far as your childhood. Perhaps you were disrespected in childhood. Perhaps the beginning of your relationship with your partner where you're having issues. Whatever, your choice. And what this writing prompt did, it forced people, you and I included. I mean, the reason I chose this prompt was because I think a lot about this question. And we all of us that were involved in this prompt, have to face the possibility or likelihood of separation or divorce, or maybe not ever getting together with your partner to begin with, or maybe the men in their life would have changed. And I wonder this about myself. If you had a high expectation for a different level of respect when we first got together, and not been accepting of gaslighting, demeaning, name calling, disrespect, all of the ways in which I emotionally abused you earlier in our relationship, if you had a red line at that, and not accepting that, what would have happened to us? Would we have just never gotten together to begin with? Would I have adapted more quickly? Or would you have dumped my sorry ass? Do you ever think about it?
I do. I have thought about it often. I think that I probably would have had to have gone back further into my life to make some changes for standing up for myself and having a better boundaries with other people in my life and family of origin before I would have been able to do that with you. I think that if I had done that and felt confident and been able to share that with you, I wonder how that would have played out. I would like to think that you would have adapted and changed because you were just so head over heels in love with me.
I was and am.
That you would have changed for me, but then also I think you were a frat boy, so maybe some of your college buddies would be like, why are you doing all this for her? Who cares? She's just a chick, would they? But I feel like you're such a romantic at heart, and I feel like you would have. And so I try not to go there because then I get sad.
Well, and that was the pushback we got from a lot of our writers in Echoes of Recovery when we presented that prompt. A lot of people didn't like that prompt for various reasons. One of the reasons was, oh my God, you're leading me down a path of imagining my life without my partner, because I don't think, either I don't think he would have changed, or I don't think I ever would have started out the relationship with him because the red flags were waving and I was ignoring them at the beginning. That's actually, I wonder if I mean, the chances of us meeting are probably pretty low if you had gone further back into your family of origin, like you said, and made those changes to begin with. You probably wouldn't have been putting yourself in the kinds of situations where you and I met, just drinking your face off.
Well, we met when we were working. I feel like you were an upgrade from a lot of the people that I had.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear.
I felt like when I got to college, the people that I was looking to associate myself with, even though you were a binge drinker in college, like a lot of your fraternity brothers, I was elevating myself to a little bit, like seeking out people that were more, future-oriented and action-oriented and had good prospects, and people that were curious and, I just really wanted to elevate myself. So I feel like maybe that wouldn't have changed so much had I stood up for myself. Maybe the only way we wouldn't have met is maybe I would have went ahead and moved, because the standing up for myself with some of my family members and family of origin and people I was connected with, I would have been like, sayonara, I'm out of here. And we would have maybe never met because I had plans to move with a friend out of state right before you and I met. Or it was a few months after you and I met. So that's the only time I think about how maybe that would make us not meet. I think the way we met and where I was working, that to me, that seemed like it was a great spot for a college student to meet a lot of interesting folks and from all different areas of activities on campus.
Well, it's definitely an interesting hypothetical, certainly tinged with sadness, and I can see why that's a difficult place for people to go. And as much as I know that our listeners just love us just reeling off our opinionated ramblings, after we talk about our sponsors, we're going to get into the data a little bit, Sheri. We're going to reveal the results of some exciting research that our listeners actually contributed to. Maybe you, listener, remember taking a survey for us sometime in the last few months, and we're going to tell you the results of that survey. But first, we're going to tell you that we are sponsored by SoberLink. SoberLink is the premier remote alcohol monitoring system, combining cutting-edge technology with compassionate design to support accountability in recovery and family law. But SoberLink alone is not the solution. If you think that a piece of technology, even the best-in-class, top-of-the-line tech like SoberLink, is going to solve your alcohol or communication or trust problem for you, it will not. No device can do that. But if you are looking for an important, reliable, dependable, proven part of the solution, SoberLink is for you. I personally wish I had known about SoberLink when I was trying to get sober or when I was trying to regain your trust, Sheri. Sometimes I stayed sober and accountable through sheer willpower and determination, but sometimes that wasn't enough and I needed to use my tools, like eating something or getting hydrated or getting out in nature or reading about alcoholism. Other times I needed to talk to someone who understood, and still other times I needed to play it all the way forward and think about the repercussions of drinking. Even with all of that, I could have used more help. I could have used another tool. It took me 10 years and a lot of relapses to get sober and rebuild trust with you. If I had had SoberLink, and I knew that there was a scheduled testing coming up soon and on a regular daily interval basis, I know I would have gotten sober sooner and our communication and trust would have improved exponentially. Sometimes I just needed to know someone was watching to keep me making the right next decision.
So right now, SoberLink is offering Untoxicated podcast listeners a free offer ID valid for a $100 enrollment bonus. You can grab your offer ID while this offer is still valid.
That is a $100 enrollment bonus for SoberLink's best-in-class service and product combination with built-in facial recognition, tamper detection, expert in-house support, emailed daily, weekly, or monthly reporting that's court admissible in all 50 states and Canada, unlimited testing days, and scheduled testing to build accountability and trust.
So claim your offer ID for a $100 enrollment bonus. There is no commitment required to claim your offer ID while this promotion lasts, and you can use your $100 enrollment bonus when you're ready to place your order. To claim your offer ID, you will only be asked to provide your name and email address. No personal details, no commitment, and no credit card number. To claim your offer ID for your $100 enrollment bonus, please go to soberlink.com/untoxicated.
If you have experienced secondhand alcoholism,
if, like me, you're the loved one of an alcoholic,
then please choose which of these ways you are ready to help end the suffering.
Are you sick of walking around on eggshells with a constantly activated nervous system?
You know it's not healthy to be stuck in fight or flight.
I know. Don't you think I know that by
Yes,
now?
yes, I suppose you do. Are you fed up with a culture that normalizes a toxic carcinogen in a bottle as the answer to stress, celebration, socializing, and mourning?
Are you sick of watching your partner drink alone in the garage or in the basement, and while you don't think they're paying attention, making you feel crazy like you're an alcohol police?
Are you sick of being told by your partner and a sick culture that you are the one with the drinking problem because you can't relax and stop acting like a control freak?
Are you crushed under the weight of anger and resentment and hopelessness and frustration, confused with nowhere to turn for support?
If you checked a few of those boxes, we need your help in our Echoes of Recovery think tank. Don't sit on the sidelines and hope someone else will fix the secondhand effects of alcoholism. Be part of something special. Join us in crushing the stigma and helping people grow.
You just might help yourself in the process, too.
To find out if you belong in Echoes of Recovery, please take our 1-minute quiz at echoesofrecovery.org.
We need you. Do you need us? echoesofrecovery.org.
All right, Sheri, let's set the stage. Let's tell people the premise for the research that we did. There are statistics about attraction and relationship dynamics from pre-COVID, pre-dating apps, pre-technology addictions like porn and social media. And when we hear people reference, for instance, what are people looking for in a relationship? What do people find attractive about the opposite sex or about people that are in their dating pool? When we hear people cite statistics from research that's from the 19 teens, or not the 19 teens, the 20 teens, pardon me, pre-2020, pre-COVID, we're like, yeah, that's ridiculous. Why would you talk about that? Because everything is different now. Certainly the effect of COVID, but people don't go to bars and meet anymore. People don't go bowling and meet anymore. They meet on these dating apps. And in addition, technology has had a detrimental effect on people with gambling addictions and porn addictions and just the amount of time spent on social media. None of that pre-2020 data matters. And so we were unable to ascertain from looking at the current research, the newer research, what it is that people find attractive about each other and what are people looking for when it comes to relationship dynamics. So we decided to do our own research. And what was particularly frustrating for me is there's a lot of talk these days in like national media, like big time media, about the plight of boys and men and how addiction rates are up, suicide rates are up. Boys and young men aren't finding partners. They aren't finding meaningful employment. The numbers are kind of staggering of the number of young men that are living in their parents' basement, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And the pundits that are trying to solve the problem keep citing research that says things like, oh, women are looking for a man that signals financial resources. And I'm like, gosh, that doesn't sound like any of the conversations we're having. That doesn't sound to me like the things that women are looking for. Mm-hmm. So we did our own research. Thanks to our listeners, many, I would say a majority of we don't know, right? Because we had no identifiable tracking of participants in our survey, but just based on the fact that we promoted it through the podcast, I think a lot of our survey participants were Intoxicated Podcast listeners. So the first thing I want to do is say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to, when you finished listening to the podcast, to go to stigmasurvey.org and answer. Really, there was some demographic questions, but there were two kind of meat and potato questions that we asked, and then there was an open-ended space for typing your opinion. But we really appreciate the Intoxicated Podcast listeners who took the survey. We ended up with 127 usable results. So that number is, there are definitely statistically significant surveys. There is university level research that's based on smaller sample sizes than that. So that's a legit number. But we do want to recognize that it's not definitive. And we would encourage the research community to take this little kind of trial research project that we did and try to replicate it, try to expand on it. I am very, very confident that the results will be the same. I feel really good about the consistency of the answers that we received across, between men and women and also across age ranges. A lot of consistency to the feedback that we got. So I think this is replicatable research for sure. I definitely feel it will hold up. If you want to read the full details, we did write a report about this research. You can go to stigmasurvey.org, the same URL you used to take the survey. It now has a link to the survey results, and we encourage you to do that. We'd love it if you looked at the whole survey report. We are not going to talk about the whole survey report. One of the reasons, Sheri, is when we record these podcast episodes, I get a lot of energy, a lot of juice from when I look over at you and I see the look on your face. Sometimes it's a look of disgust. Sometimes it's a look of frustration. Sometimes it's a look that you have something you want to say and you want to get in there and I need to back off and let you in. Sometimes I look over when I talk about statistics and numbers and I find that you're asleep. And I'm like, how are you sleeping? Sitting up?
I had like my pillow all ready to go. I was all like ready to like just kind of relax and sit back and let you blah, 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 number.
Yeah. Wouldn't that have been great?
Yeah.
I mean, I do geek out about the numbers.
You do.
Like I learned how to do like by variant correlations.
We don't care.
And linear regression analysis and all this stuff. I don't geek out about that because even though I know how to do it, I don't know that I fully like buy it or understand it or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just like looking at percentages of people and how they answer. Like that. Oh, I could do that all day long and twice on Sunday. I love those numbers. So we're not going to go through the whole survey results, but we are going to talk a little bit about the kind of the big aha moments that we had. The first question that we asked people, and I quote, "From these options, what are the 3 most important characteristics you look for in a partner?" So we're trying to get to attraction here.
Okay.
What things attract you in a partner? Do you want to read?
I'll read them. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. You can give your voice a rest. Physical attractiveness, sense of humor, financial resources, kindness, similar values and desires, high sex drive, assertiveness, and good listener.
Sheri, let's say you're taking the quiz right now. You've got to pick 3 from that list. What 3
you
things?
want me to share my answers with everybody is what you're saying.
Well,
I did take the quiz.
Right, but your answers are well disguised and masked in the 127 responses.
Yeah.
So how about if you just reveal
the 3?
The 3.
Similar values and desires.
Okay.
Kindness and sense of humor.
Okay, you definitely were in the majority here. You picked, well, actually, I've got it right here. 79% of respondents. Now, remember, the respondents picked 3. So the percentages aren't going to add up to 100%. They're going to add up to 300%. If you look at the whole, all the survey results.
Math geek.
You're welcome. But 79% of people picked similar values and desires.
Why would you want to be involved with somebody who has doesn't share similar values or desires? If you're just marrying a douchebag, you're dating a douchebag.
If your first date, if your datee, the person that you're going on the date with, invites you to come and rob a bank,
you're gonna say no unless you're into that.
Unless you're into it,
right?
Because then you'd have similar values and desires.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that seems logical, but
I agree. Number 2 on the list, basically 3 out of every 4 people chose kindness as something that they're looking for.
Kindness
in a
does
potential
not
partner.
And kindness does not mean a doormat. It means, showing respect. There's a level of respect, I think, that's under that category of kindness. So that's why it was easy for me not to choose good listener, because I feel like that would fall under the category of kindness.
Okay, so that's really interesting because on this list, I felt like there were 2 attributes that were kind of linked. They were components of emotional safety that we talk a lot about. And I feel like kindness and good listener were the kinds of attributes that someone who's going to be able to provide emotional safety would have. Do you agree with that? Mm-hmm. And so you had already picked one of them, and so you didn't really feel the need, since you're limited to 3.
Right.
I mean, obviously, if you can have anything you want, you'd have all of these, especially high sex drive. I'm surprised that wasn't at the top.
Well, I didn't want that, and the physical attractiveness. Those were the way up there. But I felt like that was really just, the part of me that I want no one to know about.
I can smell your sarcasm.
Yeah.
But so good listener didn't need to be in your top 3 because you already picked kindness.
Right. Because
that's actually helping me a lot.
Well, and I feel like if you weren't a good listener, but you were a kind person, you would recognize if I brought to your attention, hey, when you and I are discussing something, I need you to be a listener, not an action maker, not a, fixer. I just need to let you, I just need you to listen. So then you would be like, oh, totally, because you're kind and you have respect for me. So.
Perhaps we've just pointed out a flaw in study design right there. Those two didn't need to both be on the list, but they were. So let's keep going. Okay. So similar values and desires was the top of the list. Kindness second. Sense of humor third. I think this is really interesting. The fact that sense of humor made it into the top 3 was driven in very large part by the young adults who took this survey. I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but something like 90% of people age 18 to 29 chose sense of humor. 9 out of every 10. So that's really interesting to me, how important sense of humor is for young people that are trying to find a partner out there.
And me.
And you like it too.
Yeah.
Well, you have always said that was a big part of why you and I started hanging out.
Yeah.
Or you know what young people call it now? They call it talking to each other.
Oh.
Before you're dating, you're talking to each other. So we had like going with, remember that?
Yeah.
You were going with somebody. Are you going with somebody? And I think that was an offshoot of going steady, but we
I
didn't
think
want to be
in our college days, we called it just hooking up. Because, I mean, you didn't have to go in with anybody before you had sex. So, but anyhow, yes, I found that you were very funny. You were like not self-deprecating funny, but you had a good sense of humor about yourself and others and could find funny things about things that could be tough. And I think that could carry you a long way when you have a really difficult times.
So I wonder if people who used to be young people who are now midlife people, back when they were young people, if they would have chosen sense of humor as the top.
I know, I definitely would.
Today's young people did.
Yeah.
And maybe there's just not enough stress in life yet. Yeah, I hope he can tell me some jokes. You know, hope he thinks funny things are funny, or she. That's really top priority because none of the rest of it seems stressful yet. Okay, so really interesting in the data, only 7% of participants in the study chose financial resources as one of their top 3 things that they're looking for in a partner.
Well, I kind of did. I think that we've had podcasts where I wasn't a gold digger, but I thought you had a lot of great attributes that would have led to providing, for the family, and it has worked out. I just think it's kind of funny that I didn't choose that in this list now because I think there are a lot of other ways and that the financial resource has really kind of backfired in some of the relationship. Like when you traveled for work and we were like, this is not great because you want to be around the kids.
So the traveling was letting us get ahead financially.
Right, but it was also hurting us.
Detrimental to other things.
Yeah, into the grander scheme of raising good humans and being a good close-knit family.
Yeah, really interesting. Also interesting, I think, is what we talked about before the sponsor break about how people in our age range right now, we're riding both sides of this. Your formative years, your conditioning was in an environment where, I'm just going to put it bluntly, you needed to find a man who could make some money. And then you went to college.
I thought something was missing by not having more money in my life growing up. I thought there was all this stuff that money could buy and make me happier.
No, I understand that.
But
you were also looking for a man to provide that for you because when you were young, the old way was still the way.
Yeah.
And because we said all this advancement for women has taken place during our lifetime, we have all ridden both sides of the fence. Mm-hmm. So when you were in the dating market in your young 20s, that was still part of your thinking. I'm not saying it was the only thing. I mean, you were in college.
Yeah.
You graduated from culinary school. You have the resources to make your own money. But at the same time as you're earning the degree to have the resources to make your own money, you're also remembering, hey, this is part of our culture to find a man that can make some money.
Yeah, and also my family of origin didn't really think that women could necessarily do it, even though I was brought up by a single mother. It was still sort of encouraged. But wouldn't it be nice to have this bonus of this guy who is your partner that makes the money too? So I wouldn't say I was pushed necessarily, but I wasn't given the advice you can go to college and you can have a degree and you don't need a man and you don't, from my own small family of origin socialization.
Yeah.
So it was the bigger society that was still looming. I know there were a lot of our people that we were friends with in college that maybe none of them have never married because they were financially successful on their own and they didn't feel that they needed to have a financial partner. I felt like I needed a financial partner from maybe lack of self-esteem and upbringing as well as the societal component.
Absolutely. I understand why you felt that way back then. That makes a lot of sense. But in a survey taken in 2025, only 7% of participants chose financial resources signaling as one of their top 3. That just says to me, when people are looking for a romantic partner in 2025, they're no longer, by and large, looking at someone that can support them. They're looking at it as their own responsibility to support themselves. I'm looking for someone that brings other things to the table, like kindness, like similar values. It's almost as though financial resources is kind of being eliminated. And, that's what Esther Perel says. I quote Esther Perel a lot on the podcast. She says that when marriage used to be a financial arrangement, people were looking for those financial resources. Now that has been taken out, marriage is a romantic proposition and people are looking for emotional safety. That is a paraphrase, obviously, of a Esther Perel quote. So in this survey, people chose kindness 10 times more frequently than they chose financial resources. Kindness just dwarfed the financial piece of it. Often, men get sober, go to the gym, and want to take part in decisions. I also want to mention when men get sober and they go to the gym and they're like, okay, I'm taking alcohol out of my life. I'm going to do these other things. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to lift weights. I'm going to get buff. I'm going to look good for my woman. Physical attractiveness was way down on the list for women. You can check out the full survey results at stigmasurvey.org, but it was way down on the list. Only when we parse out and just pull out the men responses does physical attractiveness go pretty high up on the list. Men are looking for that at any age. Women, not so much. Women are looking for the emotional things. But so when the people on my side of the street, we get sober, we decide to get in shape, we decide to get healthy, part of the logic is I want to become attractive to my partner again. We also want to take part in decisions. We want to get back involved in our family's lives. And, some of the things that we do are interject ourselves into decision making. We want to talk about, I was an alcoholic. I had to get sober. I did that. Now let's talk about your side of the street. Let's talk about the fact that you're a control freak. Let's talk about the fact that you're a nag. Let's talk about the fact that you've got some things you need to work on. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for kindness. You're looking for me to take accountability for my stuff and just be nice. Like, let's let a aura of kindness just envelop the relationship for a little while. Let's see how you partner. Let's see how you evolve away from active addiction. Let's see what happens on your side of the street naturally if you're just living with somebody. And I'm not talking about sucking up. I'm just saying be nice. Give you an ability to get your nervous system out of activation and into regulation on a consistent basis and then see where we are. So men, if you're like, hey, because this is the largest demographic that we meet from the alcoholic men's side. It isn't single people who are trying to get sober. There's 1,000 programs that address that specifically. That's not why people come and talk to us. They come and talk to us because they're going to lose their wife. Their marriage is crumbling. So they have recognized, I need to get sober and I'm trying to save my relationship. That's what we hear most from the men that come to see us, right? Mm-hmm. The number one thing you can do besides sobriety, which is a prerequisite, and working on yourself, your own independent recovery, as far as the relationship is concerned, the number one thing you can do is just be nice. Just be a kind person and not just Be kind to your partner. Be kind to people you meet on the street. Be kind to children that are in your vicinity. Let your partner see you being consistently kind, not only to your partner, but to other people. Can you react to that, Sheri? How do you feel about that as an important first step in early recovery?
Well, I think that lays a lot of groundwork for rebuilding trust. That consistency and that kindness and that generosity and that respect, which I think generosity and respect fall under the umbrella of kindness. I think that you have to lay that groundwork, and you have to do it for a while before you can really start to trust. And, and also I think a lot of it will depend on the relationship before alcohol really kind of ruin the relationship or the addiction happens. So, and that's why there's a little bit of ebbs and flows of timing, because you don't know how much damage was done, or maybe it was a quick stint of alcoholism that had a lot of really damaging parts. But I think that's the most important. I'm sorry, I've been spacing off, like laughing to myself, thinking about like people that go to the gym. Yes, there is a physical attractiveness that happens when your partner just stops drinking altogether, like walking around with terrible breath and spilling shit and looking like hell, and maybe
like
they've
weaving a little bit,
and maybe like they've like some of those facial features that come home, like where it damages your skin, not like necessarily kidney disease and jaundice, but how it just takes a toll on aging you. So there is a level of attractiveness that happens just by quitting drinking and
by return to health.
By returning to health. So I think that a lot of men really kind of underestimate when we mean attractive. Like, it's not that we want you to look like Jabba the Hutt, and sweaty and miscolored and discolored and stuff. But once you stop drinking and your body is regulating and you're eating better and you're just taking, kind of like Graham Hawley's book, just small, simple things that take care of yourself, just getting the alcohol flushed out does a whole lot more than what they expect. But they think they have to go to the gym and become buff. And that just seems more selfish, because you're just trading in that drinking time for me time, being selfish, getting buff, and being fit and healthy. Sure. So you're not rebuilding the relationship.
Sheri.
Yeah.
Do you want to touch my pec right now? It's right here.
Your pec?
Yeah. I mean, you sound like you do. You sound like the gym, and you sound like that's high on your priority list.
No, I'm saying they don't need to go to the gym.
Just joking.
Oh, okay.
Just wanted to make it available.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess that was your sign.
Thanks for picking up on what I'm laying down.
I'm sorry. I think
also, thanks for mentioning a Disney asset. We'll be hearing from their lawyers and be editing Jabba the Hutt.
Oh.
Just kidding. Just kidding. I think we fly under the Disney radar. Although the Disney has a pretty adept radar, that's for sure.
They just need to get in agreement with YouTube so we can watch Disney and ESPN and ABC.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
I know you love your ESPN.
Well, got to watch all those good-looking men out there that are,
that are buff.
That are buff. Whatever.
You like to watch football players in their football pants?
No.
Second question from the survey. From these options, same format, different question. The first question we were getting at attraction, now we're getting at relationship dynamics. From these options, what are your 3 most important criteria for the environment within a romantic partnership? Sheri, would you read the options to our listeners?
Sure. Excitement, financial security, open communication, emotional safety, sexual activity, value-aligned behavior, intellectual stimulation, equitable distribution of workload.
All right, Sheri. 8 options for you once again. And I know you said you took the survey. And if you pick different things this time, that's fine. Because we have no way to track the answers of any of our respondents. Look at you making check marks on the notes.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that I didn't, have the answers that put me at the bottom of the list.
Open communication, emotional safety, and value-aligned behavior are your choices. Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, tied for number 1 from all of our responses was open communication and emotional safety. I think those two are linked closely together. Both of them received 3 out of every 4 respondents, a little better than that. 76% of our respondents chose emotional safety and open communication in their top 3. And then much further down the list, the bottom 3 I want to highlight specifically as we're talking about relationship dynamics are financial security, sexual activity, and equitable distribution of workload. I found that to be really interesting because we hear a lot of people complain about that.
The equitable distribution of workload?
Yeah. And so I think perhaps, again, a study design, I don't want to say a flaw in this case, but a dynamic of the study design is we asked you to pick your top 3. And so while equitable distribution of workload might be important to people, it just might not be top 3 important.
Yeah. And I can imagine why the financial security is different than the financial resource.
Signaling financial resource,
like on the first question, because, there is a detriment when you have someone who is unstable and has a mental issue that causes them to drink, or the disease of alcoholism, those sort of things. That can rock your financial world.
Yeah.
And the cost of some recovery centers and things like that.
For sure. I think.
And the long-term health, detriment. So I can understand why maybe financial security is up there a little bit more in this question. Because it's the environment within the romantic partnership
that's
once
exactly
it's developed.
Right. In the first question, we're saying what attracts you to a human. And in this one is you're already locked up with this person. You're shacking up. You are intertwining yourself. Now, how important are these things?
Yeah, because you don't want to get your, I know there are a lot of people that keep their finances separate because of past experiences with, bad relationships or marriages. But also, even that, like the thing that could happen, like a lawsuit that comes out,
Sure.
like it could destroy someone's good credit. And
a lot of the people we meet say, I don't really want to get divorced, but I also don't want to be on the same insurance policy with someone who's driving around in a vehicle drunk. And so I have to get divorced, even though I'm not at the end of my rope yet, emotionally, nervous system wise, but I can't take the risk.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe this is, someone will know this and they can answer, but I don't know if legal separation in some states even helps.
I think it's state by state.
Even helps like keep your finances separate so you don't have to be fully divorced, but while you're like maybe separated where you live, if you get a legal separation and file that can also help protect your financial assets where you won't be drugged down with that. Because we have so many stories of people like worried about their partners that they have no longer living under the same roof with, just knowing that they know they're out there drinking and driving.
Yeah, absolutely. So super interesting that 2 things, that financial security is a little higher, was chosen a little more frequently when talking about relationship dynamics versus attraction, but still, it's really far down the list.
Yeah.
Only 17% of respondents chose financial security as important in a relationship, and emotional safety is still 4.5 times more frequently chosen than financial security. So when you think about the reasons people have traditionally gotten together versus answers people would give in 2025, I bet you in 1973, the year I was born, I bet you financial security, for women especially, was at or near the very top of the list. And now it's right toward the bottom, basically tied for second to last in a survey given in 2025. And people selected emotional safety 4.5 times more frequently than financial security.
I guess I must have been your 1% for the value-aligned behavior.
No, it's in between there. I've only got 5 written down. So it's like third. Value-aligned behavior was high on the list. Not as high as emotional safety or open communication, though.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to point out, when we parse the data and look at the men answers specifically, physical attractiveness and sexual activity both go significantly higher on the list. So if people are data geeks like me and you want to check it out, please go to stigmasurvey.org and you can see it all broken down in age and male-female categorizations. So we see so many women that are trying to, I use the word demand, trying to expect, maybe I should use instead, respect from men, ask for respect from men, and the men aren't expecting that. Women want kindness and emotional safety, and that's something that we are in the midst of a transition for here as us Gen Xers, us people in midlife. And I just want to drive home to our listeners that sobriety is just a prerequisite for relationship repair. What this survey data, if you take nothing else from this research, please take away that beyond the prerequisite of sobriety for relationship repair, the things you need are kindness and emotional safety. And this isn't just you and I stating our opinion. The data proves it. So men need to demonstrate emotional masculinity, as we've been talking about a lot lately. Providing that environment of emotional safety, protecting the family from criticism and critique and comparison, leading emotionally intimate conversations, including resentment processing, and serving without scorekeeping or whataboutism and without expectation of return. So men, we can still demonstrate masculinity, just doing so in an emotional way, still providing, protecting, leading, and serving. And that's exactly the blueprint for how to do it. So again, we encourage listeners to check out the full report of findings at stigmasurvey.org. Sheri, thanks for a vibrant conversation about this. Thanks for, you were hidden, one of 127. Nobody knew what you thought. But now it's out in the open.
Now they do. Or maybe.
I bet a lot of
Maybe I changed all my answers.
Ooh, maybe you were faking it?
I was faking it.
Which
faking it was I doing?
I don't think you have the ability. I don't think you have that in you. And I think that since the vast majority of our listeners relate to you, I bet a lot of people were nodding their head when you were revealing your answers. Thank you for listening to the Untoxicated Podcast. You've got this, and we've got you.